The size of the problem, it's huge, right? Until you follow up for your payments, you will never get them.
I would love to know more about like your sales strategies.
皆さんこんにちは。世界のスタートアップ情報を発信するスタートアップバックパッカーです。会社を辞めてバックパッキングしながら各国のスタートアップや VC を取材しています。今回の起業家は本当にいろんな事業内容にチャレンジして最終的にすごいソフトウェアで成功しているような起業家で、かなり独特でユニークな借金取りサービスなんで非常に面白い内容になってます。そこの良いアイデアを見つけられた方法みたいなところを議論してから、その後にどういった戦略でソフトウェアが売ることができているのかみたいなところをですね、深掘っていくので、ソフトウェアを売っている方とかソフトウェアで起業されたような方とか、特に最後まで結構有益な情報になっておりますので、ぜひご視聴ください。それでは、Let's go!
So now I'm with Kunal, the founder and CEO of Credflow.
So a little bit of my personal background. I come from a very entrepreneurial family. So my father, all my uncles, etc. have been running businesses for quite some time. So that was very clear to me that eventually I want to build something big. Thankfully got into IIT Delhi, which is one of the premier engineering colleges in India. Did my undergrad in engineering from there. So I started up a couple of times in college itself. We were trying to build 3D printed shoes there. We started up, failed miserably, but learned a lot of things out of that. And eventually, just after my graduation, I immediately after started another B2B venture, wherein we were basically building a B2B marketplace for raw materials for cosmetic and pharma manufacturers. While doing that, so essentially we scaled up decently well. We were scaling up well. But the very common theme that we were ourselves seeing was that all our customers, all our vendors, ourselves were always facing the same challenge around working capital management. We used to sell on credit to our customers, so collecting money on time from debtors was a very big pain point for us. Essentially, working capital became the bottleneck for our growth. All the businesses face a lot of challenges because their money is stuck in unpaid invoices. And if someone could even unlock some percentage of that, they can really unlock a lot of value for that business. So that was how Credflow began. We figured out why that problem exists and how that could be solved to some extent. And we started building out a product. And the initial focus group we had actually showed that we were onto something. The kind of traction we were getting, the people, how they were responding to our solution. And then eventually we started scaling up. We basically built out a full stack solution in terms of SaaS to automate their overall receivable and payable management. And now we extended that into also giving financial solutions to these people in terms of giving financing to these people built as a layer of intelligence on top of their existing cash flows, right? So that is how we've progressed as a business.
So what it basically does is it's driven by AI and it reminds the customers, right, to pay the debt back. When they receive these like notifications, like do they actually pay? Does this actually solve the problem? And how big is the problem here?
In terms of the size of the problem, it's huge, right? Until you follow up for your payments, you will never get them on time. I would say that is a very big cultural problem that we have. So until you nudge your customer to pay you back on time, they will never do that. And we realize that the more aggressively you follow up with the customer, obviously keeping that relationship intact because they're repeat customers, you don't want that relationship to get harmed. But if you keep on following up with them again and again with a system that is automated so that you don't come in between and basically that relationship doesn't get hampered, right? So for example, if I myself call my customer 5 times in a week, he will get annoyed saying that okay, I'll pay, and next time think twice about buying from me. But if there's an automated system, right, you have plausible deniability that we are not doing it intentionally, but if there is a payment overdue, you need to do that on time. So that builds discipline, and the customer also tends to pay you back on time, right? So that is one psychological thing that we were able to figure out. And now with so much of scale we have, and we've actually seen businesses adopting and people coming back to us, that this has become such an integral part of our business that if it stops even one day, our collections take a hit and we are able to not recover that.
Is this mainly because of people forgetting about payments, or is it because like they actually don't have cash? What are like the main reasons why they get delayed?
There are two parts to the problem. One is basically the ability to pay off the customer, and second is the willingness to pay off the customer, right? Typically what happens is that client also has a limited capital. Now psychologically he will always pay the vendors who are making the most amount of noise for him. He will always tend to pay them first and then basically the others. That was one key insight. Second is that the less disciplined your collections are, the less disciplined your buyer will be in terms of paying back, right? So for example, if your credit period with a customer is 30 days and if you're yourself following up for the first time on the 35th day, the customer also realizes that this customer himself doesn't care much about collecting on time. Then the customer also tends to basically delay it by about 10-15 days. So these are the problems which we are able to automate and eliminate.
I also like to know more about the SaaS B2B landscape in India.
So I think it's a very, very deep market, but at the same time, it has much deeper contours than a one size fits all. So you can broadly broadly divided into maybe three spaces. One is the enterprise segment. There, the market has a lot of depth. Now, traditionally, it has always been that India has always resisted paying a lot for softwares, and that has been one challenge that a lot of SaaS companies used to face. But now that is changing. There are a lot of tailwinds driving that. One is a lot of digitization coming in post-COVID, and even before that, they now realize the kind of potential and the value that it brings to their business. I think one very common theme that every entrepreneur who's looking to build out a SaaS in India is that you should build a solution which either generates revenue for businesses or basically drives a very significant cost saving for them, right? Otherwise, if you're building a good to have solution, that typically ends up becoming a very hard selling proposition for businesses in India, because Indian businesses are very, very brutal about adopting anything new. Now, coming one tier below, so there are a lot of mid-sized businesses, mid-sized SMBs, and even SMEs. Now, again, the tailwinds are similar in these as well. The historical adoption in this has been even lower in terms of propensity to pay, etc. But that is again also changing. Even though the market size in terms of number of customers is very huge, the average revenue per user in this segment is typically been lower, and it will continue to be low in the next at least 10 years. That's my own prediction. So India-only businesses around software need to figure out alternate streams of income, right? If a SaaS solution is able to prove that they're able to drive this much amount of revenue for a business, they can take a chunk of it, right? So more of, rather than subscription-based products only, more of transaction-based pricing is what will actually work in India, is at least in SMEs. And if someone can crack that, I think they can really build a large business, right? So some of the businesses which have really cracked that, for example, have businesses which started out with low ARPUs, with low subscription costs, low barrier to entry with respect to adoption, but are able to drive very high ARPUs when it becomes on scale. And basically, the cost is driven by the kind of value that it gives to the business, not just as a upfront subscription cost. That's a very interesting insight that I have gathered over time.
That is very interesting. So what's your pricing model like?
Yeah, so in our case, how we have structured our business model is that there is an upfront subscription price, which is nominal in terms of up to about $150 per annum per business. But more importantly, our business model is such that we will make much more money when we basically give financial services to these people. When I say financial services, so we're talking about that entire ecosystem of products around their cash flows. So for example, for any business that we have, right, they typically have receivables and payables, and marrying the two either by giving them lending when they're short of capital, that is where we basically make money. That is one piece. And second is if it's a surplus scenario, it's a scenario wherein the business has surplus cash with them, giving them a solution wherein they can park that in some liquid instruments and get some ROI, versus for example that money parked in a current account, they get nothing out of that. This is how our model is structured. So SaaS is an entry point for us to capture the data and get embedded into their businesses and build that distribution, but we make money through financial services.
Okay. Are you actually looking into international markets?
Yeah, we have that as a part of our roadmap, and we want to do that in the maybe next 2 to 3 years. I think the problem statement that we are solving for and the solution we have is very much transferable across geographies, obviously with local tweaks. Maybe in the next 2 years, we want to probably at least attack 1 or 2 markets, maybe Europe and US, and then probably outwards.
I would love to know more about your go-to-market strategy or sales strategies.
Now, how do we reach him is basically we think of them as a normal consumer. What are the kind of places they spend their time on, where their engagement is? And the 2 primary channels which work for us really well is one, social media advertising. So we do a lot of advertisements on Facebook, all the meta platforms, and Google, and we get a lot of leads from there, and then our inside sales team calls up and converts these people. And the second channel for us is partnerships, wherein we have built out a huge reseller network in India. They cross-sell and upsell our product to the same customer. They act as a very good channel for us because they are the ones who've already sold a software to these people. The SMEs trust them, and already they have a very right target group. The mix across these 2 channels is about 50-50. A lot of customers come organically as well. So for example, I send you a reminder through our platform that, hey, Everett, you owe me 20,000 rupees to pay back my whatever you had purchased from me. So you might also sign up. So actually out of 100 users, 20 of those users come organically.
So it's not like you're doing direct sales or cold emails or no?
No, we're not doing that. So we started out with absolute cold calling and cold emails. Over time, we figured out that is not scalable. That was good for say a 0 to 1. to get the early customers, the early adopters, and basically get the product market fit. Then after that, when you need to go to high velocity sales, you need to figure out other channels wherein you can get a huge amount of leads in one go on a single day, and basically your sales team can convert them very quickly.
Very interesting. Do you think there are like opportunities for like other companies in other countries to come here in India and do like a B2B business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Indian market is very, very big. We have the world's second biggest population, and will soon be the biggest population, right? Eventually, and our economy is also very, very big. Right? We've seen very good examples of companies coming from outside and being able to adopt to the Indian ecosystem very, very quickly and bring in innovations like Uber, Amazon. They've been able to adapt very well to the Indian ecosystem. So I'll give you one very specific example here, right? So for example, one challenge Uber used to face was that the wrong rider used to sit in the wrong cab and basically go away, and then after some time they would realize, right? So they built a very unique solution for that, only focusing in Indian market. Right? You have to give an OTP at the time of starting the ride. So that was a solution that they thought specifically for Indian market first.
Oh, really?
In similar way, for example, Amazon built out a very extensive supply chain to deliver on time in India. They basically introduced cash on delivery in Indian market very early, while others like eBay, etc., which had come before them, had never done that, and because of that they failed, right? Because there was a lack of trust back then in terms of digital payments. So all these companies which have been able to adapt to Indian culture well and learn problems that are there for Indian population, they've done very well. Even in, for example, specifically talking about B2B fintech ecosystem, someone like a PayU, they've done very well in Indian market. And they were again also able to build out solutions which were compliant with Indian payment systems, which were solving for Indian payment needs, and have, I mean, really grown well in Indian ecosystem. I mean, there are so many more examples I can quote which have been successful, but there's definitely an opportunity for an entrepreneur from outside India coming and solving problems.
I have two more questions. One is, what are your future dreams? And it would be nice, like, if there's any like connections you'd be looking for in Japan.
We want to build Credflow into one of the largest B2B fintechs in India. We want to build out the entire operating system for Indian businesses around the financial ecosystem. So that's the personal aspiration and the dream that I have. And in terms of what we are looking for from Japan, right? So obviously Japan has a very deep financial ecosystem. So if someone can tap that market and basically be able to access capital from there, that is one very big advantage that someone would be able to enjoy. Then apart from that, obviously we've always heard of the kind of talent that exists in Japan. If someone could basically tap that, and even as a market, Japan is very, very large, right? You can focus on just one small city and you can get a very huge customer base as well. So even that as an opportunity exists, but obviously the culture is very, very different. So if someone wants to build out there, I would personally would love to visit Japan sometime. In fact, I've always told my wife about this, that Japan would be among the top countries that we would want to visit.
Yep. Please definitely visit us. Thank you so much. I learned so much from
Thank
you.
you.
It was
Thank
a
you
pleasure
for
talking with
having
you.
me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
いや、今回も面白かったですね。インドは特に、中国もインタビューした時そうだったんですけど、法人があまりソフトウェアにお金を使いたくない方が多いということもあって、いかにそのサブスクリプションのその月額の費用に上乗せして、そういう手数料とか、今回の場合は金融商品を提供することで稼ぐみたいな、そういったビジネスモデルですごい面白いなと思いました。そういった工夫もすることで売り上げを上げていく、そういった考え方もできるんで、法人向けのソフトウェアとか提供している方、しようと思っているような方には、ヒントになるような内容だったのかなと思います。あとはもうお金の利払いが非常に多いっていうインドの文化的な背景もあって、問題が大きいっていう非常にそういった意味でもすごい面白い内容になってたかなと。本日は以上になります。こういった面白い海外スタートアップ情報をどんどん流しておりますので、ぜひチャンネル登録いただけると嬉しいです。皆さんありがとうございました。